In today's lesson, we will be talking about 5th grade geometry. The 5th grade geometry standard we will be discussing is standard G.5.1, which states graph points on coordinate planes to solve real-world and mathematical problems. Here is a more in-depth breakdown of the standard. So what exactly is a coordinate plane? A plane containing two perpendicular axes, which is an x and y axis, intersecting at a point. And you will need to be writing this down in your notebook to keep up for your review sessions later on in the unit. So let's look at the chart here. You can see that we have two lines, one going horizontal and one going vertical, that they cross in the middle. The point where they cross, where it says 0, is called the origin, or 0, 0. And we will talk about the coordinates in a little bit whenever we get farther along in the lesson. But here is where the two lines intersect. Another key term that you will need to write in your journal is axis, and it is two perpendicular lines. And you will find out that we have an x and a y axis. The x-axis is the horizontal axis, which is going across here. The y-axis is the vertical axis that goes up and down. So here is a diagram of showing you where exactly these key terms are on a coordinate graph. And you can see we have the term origin again, and it's pointing to the spot in where the two perpendicular lines cross, where it would be considered 0, 0. And then you can see the vertical line, the y-axis, and the horizontal line is the x-axis. So this is just helping you to visually see these terms on the coordinate graph. Next, we're going to look at the graph, and we are going to talk about this area here, which we will later find out is quadrant 1. Whenever you are working with quadrant 1, all the numbers on your coordinate grid will be a positive number. And as you can see, if you start at the point of origin and work over, you'll see going along the x-axis, you will see that the numbers are positive. So we're going in increments of 1. So the first line here is 1. And then we go over to the next spot and we have 2, 3, and then this would be labeled 4. As we go up the y-axis, we have the same concept as each block represents 1. And you can see that the lines as you go up are going in increments of 1, as the same as the x-axis. And here you can see that it's listed quadrant 1. If we start looking over here, you will see that this is going to be called quadrant 2. On the x-axis, the numbers would be a negative number, but the y-axis would still be a positive number because we would be going up. Next, we would go down to what is called quadrant 3. These numbers are going to be both negative because you will have a negative x-axis number and a negative y-axis number. And then lastly, we have quadrant 4. The quadrant 4, the x-axis would be positive, a positive number, but the y-axis would be a negative number. So let's talk about these numbers and how do we figure out what a point would be labeled, or how would we be able to find a point on a coordinate grid. So if we have our coordinate grid here, and we're going to look at this first point here, you can see that it is in quadrant 1. So that means that both our x-axis number would be positive and our y-axis number would be positive as well. So if we start at point 0, 0, we would go over 1, 2. So our x-axis number would be 2, since that lines up with where our point is on the graph. And then if we go up the y-axis, we're going up vertical, we would see that we would only go up 1 spot. So for this point, the x-axis would be 2 and the y-axis would be 1. So the coordinate grid for this point would be 2, 1, because our x-axis is listed first and then our y-axis. So let's try another one. As we said, it was in quadrant 1. So let's look at this point here. The x-axis, if we start at the point or the origin, which would be 0, 0, we would go over and we can see that we're going up in increments of 1. It would be 1, 2, 3. So our x-axis would be 3. And then if we wanted to find our y-axis, we would start counting up. 1, 2, 3. So if we go across, we see that we're at the number 3 on the y-axis as well. So the coordinate grid for this point would be 3, 3, because our x-axis is 3 and our y-axis is 3 as well. Both of those numbers would be positive because we are in quadrant 1.